Another edition of First and Now, the often imitated, seldom duplicated BC Lions official podcast. Whether you believe that's accurate or not, we're still here. Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski, inside of 30 days to Kamloops. Starting to get excited there. Are you, young fella?
Very, yeah. The 1 month countdown is on now, and that's super exciting in itself.
Yeah, rookies will report to Thompson Rivers University May 11th. Rookies and I believe the quarterbacks, not sure yet, but we'll have all roster information for you next month for sure. And then, it's on. We announced this week the 1 month countdown. For those fans wondering, we'll have FanFest back, brought to you by BCLC. FanFest at Hillside includes a team scrimmage, a play with the pros clinic, all that fun stuff that we were used to pre-2020, so to speak. And starting to feel like football, definitely, isn't it, Nick?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. It's felt really good all season with the off season with the guys all here with the quarterbacks and the offensive linemen and a couple others. But yeah, like we said, under a month.
And we're going to get into that pretty much here in just a minute. Giulio Caravatta, longtime BC Lions radio analyst, Lions football back this season on AM 730 and the Lions radio network. Giulio, of course, no stranger to the BC Lions and Canadian football. Maybe we'll have some fun with Giulio, talk about his own playing career and some of the various CFL markets he used to visit that no longer exist. But the whole Canadian quarterback dynamic, we've talked about it a lot. You've been out filming Rourke and O'Connor for our Arrow Up documentary. Check out the trailer at bclions.com. We'll talk to Giulio about these guys, but Nick, how much have you enjoyed being around those two up close?
It's been fantastic with each of them. Like they've put in the work in all off season. They've been throwing in North Vancouver multiple times a week with a really, really excellent quarterback kinesiologist coach in Rob Williams. And they both seem ready to take on this season and take whatever challenges come at them. I know Nathan's been named the starter, but Michael's definitely proclaimed that he's ready to jump in at any moment and do whatever it takes to help the team win a Grey Cup. And just both of them, I think that they'll surprise some people this year. I know people are maybe uncertain that they don't have the experience maybe heading into this season, but based on what I've seen kind of behind the scenes, I guess you could say, is they're both ready and they're both extremely talented players at the quarterback spot.
It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Beforehand, we used to hear, Michael O'Reilly's getting too much and, it's left you thin at other positions. Maybe not. I mean, a lot of factors went into the last couple of years and not being able to put together a winning playoff season. But we'll get into this with Giulio. It's allowed the organization to address some other key needs on the roster: defensive line, defensive back, the kicking game. We had Sean White on a podcast here a couple weeks ago. Should be no real anxiety with the kicking game. So we're going to get into all that with Giulio Caravatta of the Lions Radio Network coming up. And now we head over to the Bat Cave. Giulio Caravatta.
There's nothing embarrassing behind me, is there? There's a towel, right? That's it. Okay, because I had to do a little cleanup. So.
Well, we had that scandal at the start of COVID when you were kind of walking around in your underwear and you didn't realize your Zoom camera was still on. But no, that wasn't you. That was somebody else on the broadcast.
Yeah, that would have definitely been somebody else.
Yeah. Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski, First and Now. Giulio with us as on the day we're recording this, we posted that Jalen Edwards Cooper video, number 29. 29 days until rookie camp starts. And Giulio, sir, you must be getting really excited. How jacked are you to get on with 2022?
Well, I always get super excited this time of the year. For just for the start of football, when it's been in your blood this long, this time of the year always, as a player, it starts getting closer. You get more guys coming out to work out. And for us who cover the league, we get excited about all the potential. We love looking forward to, what all the teams are going to look like. And especially for me, a lot of changes with the BC Lions, and a lot of exciting change, a lot of exciting additions. And it's going to be, I think, a very, very exciting time in this organization with the new ownership. This is going to be his first full year, Mr. Doman's first full year. So excited about all the things off the field and super excited about what's going to happen on the field.
Well said. I mean, and we can't really talk about the makeup of this roster and how it's going to look here going forward this year and beyond that, hopefully for several years, without, talking about the big domino to fall. And we were kind of expecting it. Michael Riley retiring, Nathan Rourke listed as the starting quarterback, along with fellow Canadian Michael O'Connor. Also have Isaac Harker and Kevin Thompson coming to camp. So 4 solid quarterbacks going to be fighting for reps. Just your whole thoughts, though, Giulio, on the changing of the guard behind center. It's the big story.
Yeah, no question. Nathan obviously has proven to the organization, and I know he's proven it to me, that he's ready for this next step. And obviously, when you're going into a season with a guy who's got, relatively little experience at the pro level, there's always going to be question marks. But you have to trust what you see from an evaluation standpoint. And, for me, I watch the quarterbacks very closely, and everything about Nathan's game tells me that he's going to be a very good quarterback. It's one of the things that really jumped out at me right away with him is that there seemed to be no panic in his game. So one thing about rookie quarterbacks, there's always a tendency to kind of make one read, and then you start to scramble a little bit, looking to kind of get out of the pocket or make something happen with your feet. He's been very, very well coached throughout his career, and his progression from 1 to 2 to 3 is very impressive. Now, is he going to be able to sustain a long season and all those things that go into being a starting quarterback? Everybody starts here, right? The Michael Rileys, the Bo Levi Mitchells, the Trevor Harrises, they all start somewhere. And let's hope for all of us in the BC Lions fan base that this is the starting point of a very, very good career for Nathan Rourke. And that's obviously he's going to have a lot of pressure on him. You're now the starter. You're the guy that, is going to be pulling the trigger every down. All eyes are going to be on you, and it's going to be an exciting ride.
Of course. And of Giulio, Nathan Rourke is not only has the pressure of becoming the starter of the season, but he also carries a Canadian passport, and just naturally in the CFL that adds a little more pressure. And as someone that yourself, you've been in those shoes in the past. So can you talk about, is there anything that comes extra with having the Canadian passport and being a starter? Yeah,
well, I mean, clearly that is going to be a topic that everyone wants to talk about because it just hasn't happened. This scenario, like I ran into Larry Justanis, and I don't know if you remember Larry Justanis. He was a quarterback back in the day when I was playing, and we were talking about, hey, wouldn't it be nice to be around now? Like, given the fact that the Lions are not only, named Nathan Rourke their starter, but they bring in a backup who's Canadian. Back in our day, my goodness, you would have never seen that. So the pressure obviously is going to be, I think, on the outside because it just hasn't happened in a long time. So you're going to have people who are going to be, obviously interested in that storyline. But I can honestly tell you that when you get to this level, you're not given anything. These, Rick Campbell's job is to put a very competitive and winning football team on the field. And that's Neil McAvoy's job. These guys are getting paid for that. So they're not doing it because it's a good story. And they're not doing it because, oh, he's Canadian. This is, they're doing it because they believe in what they see. And they've been around the game a long time. They're not going to just do this on a whim. They have probably watched countless tape. They've watched and studied him over and over again, and everything that they see indicates that this guy's going to be a great quarterback. The fact that he's Canadian, I think, is going to be something for, guys like me and the rest of the news pundits that cover the league. We can talk about that because it just hasn't happened in a long time. But I think from a football standpoint, Nathan has done all the right things. The fact that he's Canadian is fantastic because I think it's going to be great for the league. But he's always said this. He just wants to be looked at as a quarterback. And I remember thinking that to myself as well. Like the whole idea about, oh, you're Canadian. You just want to be looked at as just another player. And you want to be judged on your merits and how good you are. And I think Nathan's done a very good job of that. And clearly he's done a very good job because they wouldn't have put him in this situation unless they really believed in him.
And just as a follow-up to the whole Canadian quarterback conversation, in your opinion, we've seen Michael O'Connor and Nathan Rourke both be high draft picks in the CFL too. And if you're following the CFL news this year, it sounds like Trey Ford. Yeah, he's going to be another one that's even getting NFL attention. So why do you think, is it just a matter of personnel in the CFL and even the NFL taking Canadian quarterbacks more seriously, or are there better opportunities for them? Or why do you think this is, in your opinion?
That's a great question, Nick. And I put a lot of thought into that. And what I believe is this, is that football in this country, from a grassroots level to where we are now, has improved so much that the preparation has developed so much at the youth level, into high school and into college. And you can see with the amount of people that now are kids that are going down into the NCAA and being successful, and the amount of kids that are staying here and being successful in youth sports, it just tells me that they're much better prepared mentally. And I know, like, from a quarterback standpoint, and like I said, I put some thought into this because I coach at the high school level here. And one of the things that really jumps out at me is that these kids, a lot of them at this level, they're not physically, they're being taught how to drop and how to throw and all those things that are fundamental, no question. But so much of the game is played mentally. And you have to be mentally strong. You have to be resilient. You have to be prepared. And I think for a long time, I know in my case, I was physically as good as anybody. But from a mental standpoint, I was so far behind in preparation because I'd never been taught. I never was taught how to get ready for a game, how to watch film, how to, be prepared for blitz situations and end of games and all those things that down in the States, they've been taught since probably they've been in grade 6 about what coverage looks like, about how to run a 2-minute offense, all the little things that for a quarterback are so important. And I think now you're getting the proper coaching and preparation because physically, Larry Justanis would be another guy. Bob Dorrance was another guy. When I was around, we had the tools, but I think we were so far behind in the mental preparation part that we just couldn't catch up. And so these guys are different. You look at Nathan's path to where he is and where he's been coached and how he's been coached. And Michael O'Connor is the same way. These guys are fabulous athletes, but they also carry the component of the mental strength and resiliency you need to be successful, because there are times when things are not going to go well. And you have to find a way to dig not only yourself out, but your team out. And that's a lot of pressure. So that's why I think the development of these kids at a younger age, they're understanding the coaching they're getting at an earlier stage is really making a big difference. And we're seeing now the impact of that with these guys now, coming to the pro ranks and being ready to play.
Mm-hmm. And you speak about the mental side of things when it comes to football. How important is it for Nathan's mindset that he has Jordan McSimmick coming back? He has Brian Burnham, Lucky Whitehead, even on the O-lines, Joel Figueroa, Suk Chung are back. So how important is it as a former player, speaking yourself, to have kind of the band all back together?
Yeah, that's huge, right? Because the other part of this is, and I think very, very important part, is that if you were to go pull each one of those guys aside and say, hey, can Nathan play? And they're going to all say the same thing. Yeah, he can play. You know why? Because they show up every day as an athlete and a guy who comes out and is a member of that team, you're always looking around. You're always evaluating other players yourself. Hey, what can I do that this guy's doing? Like, I know for me personally, I used to watch Danny McManus like a hawk. How did he prepare? What did he do? What was his disposition like? Because I wanted to learn. I wanted to get better. Nathan has proved with his preparation, the kind of player that he is, the kind of work that he puts in, that they know that he's ready. They know, because they would see it if this guy was just coming in, practicing, and then leaving. First one in, last one out. Puts the time in. When he gets out on the practice field, he's making the right throws. He's making the right decisions. They see that stuff, right? They know the game. They see through people that are just pretending and people that are the real deal. And I think Nathan is going to have a great supporting cast around him. I think one of the important things for him is he needs to realize that he doesn't have to win games on his own. They got a ton of talent. And to give those guys an opportunity to make plays for you and just make good decisions. And I'm convinced, after all that I've seen from him, that this is something that they're going to do with him, is put him in positions and let the other guys let them make plays for him.
Well said. By the way, Danny McManus, one of my childhood highlights was meeting him in line at the old Scott 72 movie theater. Giulio, you must have frequented that place, kind of close to the facility.
Yeah, I have.
When that
Danny,
place.
Yeah, Danny and I were very, very good friends. And I'm pretty sure that if we were there watching a movie, we'd probably gone out to eat before that. Because that's another thing we used to do a lot of. But Danny, I love seeing Danny when I get a chance in Winnipeg. Sometimes he's there with the team, and it's always great to reminisce with him. One of the real great guys in the Canadian Football League.
Absolutely. That's a guy who should write a book for sure on all his experiences, if he can include most of the stuff that's interesting. Anyway, we're talking about the team and about the quarterbacks. Now, I mentioned the domino effect, right? The contract situation being what it is now, with Nathan and Michael. Some very, very important additions addressed on day one of free agency. You can talk about the defensive line. Steven Richardson, David Menard, Matthew Betts, Woody Barron. The linebacking core remains intact. A couple of surprises on the defense, guys like Delvin Breaux, Luchez coming back. Those defensive shortcomings last year should have been addressed, I think. Overall, what else excites you about free agency?
Well, you said it. Every one of those guys. I think Steven Richardson's a guy that I think a lot of people had pegged as a very big impact player in free agency, and for the Lions to have gotten him, I think is going to drastically improve their defensive line. Woody Barron. The other thing, and you talked about Matthew Betts and David Menard. Of course, I was always a huge fan of David Menard. I thought he was very, very underrated. He was just a guy that works his rear end off, and it just shows up to every single game. He's never going to stop. And what I understand and what I've seen of Matthew Betts is it's the same thing. He's a guy that's got a motor that never stops. But, when you talked about, obviously, Luchez Purifoy, we've had him here. He's a fantastic athlete. And he can impact the defense in so many different ways. He can play linebacker, he can play halfback, he can play safety. He can be moved all over the place. And then Delvin Breaux. When Delvin Breaux retired, he was a shutdown corner. If he comes back anywhere near what he was, man, that was to me, that one that surprised me a little bit. And he's a hell of a player. But the other thing I'll say about with all the additions on, if we're just talking about defense, the other part of this whole equation is this. When we talked about this last year, Bakes, what was the one thing we said about that defense, especially the defensive line? They had so many young newcomers, Boom Guacham, Tim Bonner, Josh Banks, right? All those guys now are going to be coming back with that much more experience, right? that's why they did what they did. They wanted to get younger. They did. And now year two of a guy who's coming back up here is such a huge deal for me, because when you go back to working out in the off season, when you've had a full year, you understand how to work out, what to work on. Nothing is new. You know the league. You've been to every stadium. Nothing is going to be unfamiliar to you. And for me, that's a big deal. They have a whole bunch of those guys. Keontae Harden's another one, a guy who had a heck of a rookie year. He's going to be that much better coming in this year because of his preparation. He knows what to expect. A lot of these guys, when they come up here, they've never played the Canadian football. A lot of them don't understand the rules. But now, after having 1 year of that experience under your belt, your preparation is going to be so much better. And now you're going to reap the benefits of that commitment to going to younger and maybe, having to make mistakes and learning on the go. Now this year, you're going to reap the benefits. So I'm excited to see some of those guys come back and the impact that they can have on the team as well.
And just to tie us all back to training camp, which is beginning in under a month, those two positional groups, defensive line and the secondary, those are two position groups I see having like a very intense battles for starting spots, because if you just look, you have more starter caliber players than positions available to start at. So as a former player yourself, like how does having training camp battles make the camp experience overall better?
Well, I tell you what, as a player, you realize, and a lot of those guys know, it's a business, right? And they realize that they need to come in great shape. They need to come prepared. And what they do in training camp is going to be a big indicator about who stays and who goes. And the reality is, when you bring that kind of group in, and that says something about what Neil and Rick have done, is they've made it a very, very competitive scenario. And nobody's going to be caught off guard. And the best part about this too is that we talk about the veterans and how competitive it's going to be. Guys, we've all been around the game long enough. Somebody's going to come up and surprise you. Some of these rookies that they're going to bring in, somebody's going to surprise you and say, wow, I've seen it over and over again coming to training camp when there's guys that all of a sudden they come out of nowhere to surprise you, and they have to find a way to make it work to get the guy in the field. So that's the exciting part. When you put a competitive team on the field, and the Lions have done that, given what happened to them last year, they needed to get better, and they went out and got what they needed to be better. And it's going to make a huge, huge impact on the field, and it's going to be competitive. It's going to be lively. It's going to be intense. But from a coach's standpoint, that's what you want.
One of those surprises back in 2016, Luchez Purifoy, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's guys. This is the job of scouting and recruiting, and this is why they're down there right now doing free agent camps. And I think it was, I know it was Wally Buono that when he used to have his opening speech of training camp, and when he was the general manager and the head coach, he used to tell everybody, my job, when I put food on the table for my family, is to find someone better than you.
Yeah.
Right? That's your job. He has to be able to go out and try to make his team the best that he possibly can. And you do that by bringing in talent, and you allow them to compete, and then you use all your experience to make the right decision. But when you get into those scenarios, it's a good place to be, because you're going to field a good team.
Well said. Well, we have you for a few more minutes here on First and Now. Excellent breakdown of the quarterbacks and the potential camp battles. We're just getting excited talking about this, but we're about 3 weeks out from the draft. Now, we've talked about this before, Giulio. You were undrafted. Maybe speaks to how competitive you were coming in, earning a spot and carving out a long career. But I didn't know this about you. Trusting that Wikipedia here is accurate, you at one point were selected by Montreal in the dispersal draft when Baltimore moved, right?
Yes.
They could protect some imports and then traded back to the Lions. What do you remember about that whole process?
Well, Well, what I remember is this: is that that was a big deal back then for me. So what ended up happening when Montreal came into the league? They had a dispersal draft, right? So the teams were allowed to protect a certain amount of Canadians, and I happened to be one of the protected Canadians. Spencer McLennan, if you remember Spencer McLennan,
Yep.
he was unprotected and he got drafted by Montreal. So when I got chosen, I didn't get chosen in that draft. But what ended up happening was I heard through the grapevine was that Montreal wasn't happy about the idea that they didn't get enough Canadians. So rather than they couldn't get a dispersal draft again because the Players Association wouldn't allow it. So the league made a deal and said to the teams, hey, listen, you got to trade somebody to Montreal. And so Dave Ritchie was there. And Dave Ritchie and I had a bit of a history. He knew who I was and liked me. And I got traded to Montreal. But I was like, I'm not doing that because this is an illegal draft. Like, it's an illegal way to do it. Like, you had a dispersal draft. I'm not. So everyone just kind of traded someone there. And I was just like, I'm not going. And I ended up sitting out about 10 days of training camp that year and ended up getting traded back. And it had nothing to do with not wanting to go to Montreal. Like, Dave liked me. He wanted me to play there, but I just said, this isn't right. So anyways, I waited, I think it was about 10 days. And then I got traded back to the Lions, and I think it was a second round pick, if I'm not mistaken. And who was that pick? Who did Montreal pick with that? Do you remember? Does it say there?
I don't recall.
Jerome Pathon.
Wow.
He was the pick that went back, but he obviously never played up here. But so that's how that all went down. So I got traded back and never set foot in Montreal. That happened to me twice, actually. In 1993, when Eric Tillman first got here and Dave Ritchie got here, I went to training camp and, I thought I won a job, and Jason Verduzco, who was a quarterback who they had signed, went to Illinois, was a big signing of theirs. They gave him a big signing bonus and everything, and he turned out to be he didn't turn out to be what they thought he was going to be. So anyways, I was on the practice roster, and Bob Obilovich was the coach in Toronto. And he plucked me off the practice roster. I went. And while I was in the air, Louis got hurt in Calgary because the team was in Calgary when I left. And Tillman activated my contract while he was in Calgary. And so when I landed in Toronto, I was still a member of the BC Lions because my contract had been activated. So I got there, and then they tried to make a trade and they wouldn't trade. So I had to come all the way back.
Wow.
So those are the two times that I've been picked up and brought back. I never played with another team. I always, I just it never happened. So I'm thankful that it worked that way because, the Lions in the following year, 1994, ended up winning the Grey Cup, and I was part of that team. And it's amazing how you kind of go up and down a little bit with your career and how things work out.
Forgotten trivia. Wow. I'm glad I brought that up. And very quickly, I know Nick has another one to ask too, but on that same wavelength, your first start as a Lion, according to this, was at Baltimore in 95. What do you remember in general about playing those American cities and going to those markets like Vegas and Memphis?
It was fantastic. It was so new, right? And we were all super excited about doing it. I won't lie, the game my game in Baltimore was obviously really special, and there was probably about 28 or 29,000 people there at old Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. But Baltimore at that time too and that was 1995. When we played them, they were like 12-2. Their defense was unbelievable. OJ Brigance was they had a ton of all-stars in that team. It was funny. I'll tell you a funny story though. When I was named the starter, the spread was 6.5, and it went from 6.5 to 14.5. So they figured there's no chance, right? I'd make it my first start against Baltimore's defense. It was going to be a disaster. So anyways, we ended up hanging in there, and we ended up losing on a last-second field goal by Carlos Huerta, if you remember. And we lost, I think it was, I want to say 27-25 or something like that, around there. So anyways, after the game, I was obviously upset we didn't win, but it was a competitive game, right? It wasn't a blowout or anything, which a lot of people thought it was going to be. And I remember Jim Mills coming up to me and saying to me, remember Jim Mills, the Hall of Fame offensive lineman? He came up to me. He said, "Hey, listen, I just want to let you know something. I'm really proud of you. You did yourself well tonight." I think. Well, I said, "Thanks, Jimmy." He goes, "But my buddies are going to be really choked." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well," he goes, "they asked me if there was any chance that I would cover the spread, and he said, no way."
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was one of my fondest memories, was that conversation after the game. But yeah, it was a huge deal for all of us to be able to go down there and compete against the Americans, because that's all those rosters were 100% American and not one Canadian on them, and a lot of guys took a lot of pride in going down and competing against them.
Fantastic stuff about the American days in the CFL. But just closing out here, I want to get your thoughts on the other teams in the CFL right now. You know, free agency's passed. We've seen Delvin Breaux, Duron Carter come out of retirement. Jeremiah Mazzoli's found a new home, Brandon Banks. So who do you think is going to be the top competition for the Lions this season across the league?
Wow. That's a really good question. I think obviously Calgary is going to be there again, because anytime you have Bo Levi Mitchell, you know you're going to be competitive. And Dave Dickinson and John Huffnagel, they know how to put together a winning team. They always have, and they're always going to be competitive. Saskatchewan, the same thing. And obviously in the West, now that Chris Jones is back, you know, say what you want about Chris, he can coach. He's proven it over and over again, and you know that they're going to be competitive. So as far as the West goes, man, oh man, you look, and then I haven't even mentioned Winnipeg. Like, are you kidding me? They obviously are going to bring back a lot of guys. It's going to be very, very competitive in the West, very competitive. And then you look at what Ottawa did in free agency. They completely turned over their roster. They needed to, and they did. And getting Masoli makes them very competitive right away. So the East, I think, is, again, going to be, competitive. It's right across the board. I always say this at this time of the year is that whenever like everyone obviously has high expectations, every team's going to say, hey, we put together the roster that's going to win a Grey Cup. That's the mindset you have to have. But so many things can happen, during the season, and injuries and all those things that really have a huge impact on a team's ability to be competitive. Every one of those teams, I said, could you imagine if they lose their starting quarterback to an injury, right? It's a question that everyone has to ask themselves, right? So, but I think honestly, Nick, from top to bottom, it's going to be super competitive. And a lot of teams that needed to get better, they got better. And it's going to be a very, very tight, close race and competitive. And it's going to be great for the fans and everybody watching, because I think it's going to be a really good year for competitive football in the Canadian Football League.
Everyone has sky-high expectations in April and May, that is for sure. Great stuff, Giulio. You were almost an Alouette, almost an Argo. Not many people realize that, so we learn something new every time.
There you go.
Hey, it's great. You yourself, Moj, Whittingham, everyone working hard.
Back together.
The band, it's like the Beatles are back together, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, everyone working hard behind the scenes to make sure that the broadcast will go off without a hitch again. AM 730 Lions Radio Network. May 28th, we're like
not that far
away from an actual game broadcast. Preseason.
Yes.
We get preseason back in 2022, Giulio.
That's right. So I'm super, super excited. I also just want to say, Matt, and you, Nick, welcome aboard. It's great having you. And you guys are doing a great job with all your stuff you're doing behind the scenes. I love it. And keep doing some great work.
There's plenty more to come too, so stay tuned. Awesome.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Thanks, buddy.
See ya.
Thank you so much.
Great stuff that was with Giulio. Lengthy conversation, but we covered a lot of great topics. Nick, you're too young to remember the CFL's American expansion. Were you even born yet?
I was born at the tail end of it, I believe. So I was learning stuff from Giulio. Even just hearing about the Baltimore days was or going to Baltimore with Giulio, that was a pretty cool story. And the fact that they had 29,000 people, he estimated, at one of the games, that's like kudos to the league for that.
I don't know if they've gotten older or maybe passed on. There was, for a long time, I don't know if you ever saw this, there was a contingent of Baltimore fans that continued to follow the league and would make the annual Grey Cup trip every year. That's how special it was.
No way.
Yeah.
It was an interesting time in the CFL, I imagine.
Well, I remember interviewing Jamie Terrace on one of these podcasts a couple of years ago. Might have been during COVID when we were just kind of branching out and reminiscing about the past. And he talked about going to Las Vegas and how the players would bring their wives, the married guys would bring their wives, and it was just different. And Jeff Reinbold, longtime veteran coach, now Montreal's special teams coordinator, was here for a couple of stops recently in 2018. And he talked about how they basically had practices in a casino parking lot, I think. And there's some wild stories. It was at San Antonio or Memphis. The players were staying in trailers on like a fairgrounds, and they're near trailers where the zoo animals were being kept. It was wild times. Can you imagine that?
Well, I think of Vegas first and foremost. I know in the NHL when they first came in, they definitely had a home ice advantage just based on the location with their own teams coming in and maybe making that more of a holiday. So I can't imagine one season in the CFL, you think you're going to Hamilton and Calgary and Edmonton, and the next year on the schedule is Vegas, right? Like that has to be quite a different change of scenery. And like you said, you can bring your wife, you can bring your family, your friends, like you can make that a whole trip, not even football related really. So I imagine it was the Posse, right? That was their name?
Yeah, and sadly, the best memory of the Posse was the ill-fated anthem singer singing "Oh Canada" in the tune of "Oh Christmas Tree." That's the automatic thing people remember about the Las Vegas Posse. That
I'll want to help you on this then. Yeah,
that?
Anthony Calvillo. I was just going to bring that up because there was a stat the other season when Chris Streveler started week 1 as a rookie for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He was the first rookie quarterback to start a week 1 game since Anthony Calvillo, and I want to say 1994 with the Posse.
Yeah. Is that right? There was no rookie quarterback in the CFL to start a week 1 game from 1994 till 2018, whatever that was?
Yeah. Chris Streveler was the first since then. I vividly remember that stat.
So that was when Matt Nichols hurt his knee in camp? Was that year? Okay.
Yep.
Remember that. Wow. Hey, we can reminisce about these great times all day long. And a lot of people talking about maybe Halifax, Atlanta, or somewhere Atlantic Canada finally maybe going to 10 teams. I think it's an if, not a when. I know we've been saying that for a long time. And maybe the pandemic really is what had put that on hold recently. I'm not sure where the stadium issue stands. So Halifax, I think we can all agree if we go to Atlantic Canada, maybe Quebec, somewhere like that, should be a little more of a Canadiana type vibe than it was in Vegas, Memphis, San Antonio.
Yeah. Well, even just getting back to an even number of teams would help out, right? I know it's a lot easier said than done, but just for I think of Labor Day weekend for that too, right? Just to have the 10 teams all playing on Labor Day weekend would be fantastic. But this is a big dream right now.
Lions and the Atlantic Schooners, traditional rivals, East versus West. There you go. Gotta love it. We want to wish all of our listeners and subscribers an early happy Easter. Glad everyone is back being able to do gatherings, enjoying their families, enjoying the finer things in life. So don't eat too much chocolate. Thanks to all those listening. We'll be back perhaps next week, to be determined. Start thinking of some guests now. For those listening on iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever your platform is, we thank you. Please leave us a review and tell your friends. We're doing CFL Lions content here on a weekly basis. And I know that's a challenge for people to find when the games aren't being played, but we are glad to be here. Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski saying so long for now on First and 10.